The Raptors fall to the Brooklyn Nets 114-105. Welcome to Raptors Tonight. I'm Randy Urban, joined by Sherman Hamilton, Jack Armstrong, and Paul Jones. Jonesy, second game in a row where the Raptors battled a large deficit. Just your reaction to the performance tonight.
Disappointing, I guess, for me, Randall, when I think about another slow start. And then you're trying to push the rock back up the hill. I mean, let's face it, they had it down to 7 at one point in the fourth quarter. So they outscored Brooklyn by 29. Normally you'd think that would be enough to win you a game, but a poor first quarter. Again, Raptors now 4-10 when they do not win the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And there's something amiss right now in the initial energy in the game. There has been a change in the starting lineup with Gary Trent not going back in. There's just something amiss early. They won 3 quarters, but they lost the first one by so much they could never make it up. And it's something that it needs to be rectified. I'll be interested to see what kind of energy they come out with Saturday night against Orlando. And I'm looking at some of the body language. I'm looking at a guy like Scotty Barnes, and we know that Scotty plays with a joy, a fervor, and enthusiasm, and I'm not seeing that consistently. And I'm wondering what's going on. It has nothing to do with my expectations or the team. I'm just his own personal deportment. Mm-hmm. That it's not the same right now. Something's off. So I'm just hoping they can turn that around. And it was tough to watch early on tonight, but. As Sherm said on our Raptors Today podcast, in typical Raptor fashion, we said it on the radio, Eric and I said, this thing will be inside 10. I don't know if it's going to be a win, but it'll be inside 10 at some point. And sure enough, it was.
Mm-hmm. Sherm, what surprised you about the start tonight?
Everything. Again, this team has not been the greatest first quarter team, but the numbers are really, really different. I mean, over 72% against New Orleans on Wednesday. Brooklyn shot 75% in that first quarter. You're giving up 40 points to New Orleans on Wednesday. You're giving up 41 to the Brooklyn Nets on Friday. So I just think that those kind of numbers are eye-popping. And I've always said this, the Raptors have not been the best first quarter team, but they just had to be better. And this was a step backwards from the game against New Orleans. So it was concerning to watch it. It was kind of baffling to try and figure out, not only was their defense not good, but their offense was equally as bad in terms of how much they struggled in that first quarter. So those things are bewildering to me. And I think now we're getting to the point where the expectation is we know this team's going to fight. We know this team is going to come back. They're gonna make something of it, make a push late. But that narrative is not a good narrative to have as a mantra. And they've got to change that. They've got to be better. And they've got to understand that, even in a game like this tonight, it's hard if you're Brooklyn and you're up by 36, 37 points so early to keep your foot on the gas. So some of that is Brooklyn taking the foot off the gas. It's human nature. So we can't get caught up in this furious comeback and making it seem like it's all of what it is. Brooklyn, you just can't play that kind of brand of basketball for 48 minutes. So it was tough to watch that first half of basketball to see basically everything that could go wrong for the Raptors go wrong.
Yeah. And Jack, you think about the game against Cleveland, holding them to 88 points. Then you go into New Orleans and you give up that many points. You go into Brooklyn and you seemingly can't stop anybody. Defensively, what are you seeing here in these last 2 games?
I'm seeing a team right now that, I think Sherman Jonesy nailed it. It's funny. I had an experience when I was an assistant coach at Fordham, and we had a team that was similar to the Raptors in terms of how we started games. And our head coach at the time, Tom Penders, we had an auxiliary gym right, not too far right from the main arena. And he had us before we stretched, and then we did 5-on-5 like shell, but just like guys screaming out assignments, sliding their feet, cutting, moving, yada, yada, yada for like 10, 15 minutes of guys like really going hard, but no contact, but hard.
Right.
And then right up and then bang, layup line and play. And it just broke us out of it. It was really interesting. But it seems like this team kind of just wants to ease its way into it. And then when they're down, then they pick it up. So I don't know what kind of jolt you need. I don't have the answer to it. But I just and that jolt starts on your defensive end. So you ask me about the defense. What's the old line? Defense is a disposition to dominate. You make your opponent uncomfortable, pressure into the ball, putting your opponent on its heels, whatever it may be, whatever philosophy you have. And the Raptors' philosophy has always been with this group of putting pressure on people, scrambling, gambling, making people uncomfortable, trying to turn people over. And as the game goes on, I see that. But early in games, it's like, well, we're going to kind of just ease our way into this. And I thought Monday night they hit first and they hit hard against Cleveland. And they have not done that the last two nights. So Sherm used a good word, bewildered. And I'm in that zone right now, too.
Got a question for you guys. The whole self-starter, the whole get it going and throwing the first punch, I firmly believe it's an innate thing. It's something that, you're kind of built with. Do you feel that that's something that can be taught? Do you think it's something that can be ingrained into players? Because it may go against their natural instincts in terms of how they approach things. I've always thought it was an innate thing. And sometimes if you don't have enough self-starters, guys who are willing to go out there and throw the punch consistently, because that's how they're wired.
Yeah.
I've always wondered if that's something that you could kind of drill into people to get them to change their habits.
Sherman, I don't think you can change personality. I don't. I believe, you're on with that comment. But I do believe you can, as Jack talked about at Fordham, kind of manipulate the environment to have it done, well, on occasion. If you're not that type of personality, my dad used to say in Latin, I don't know what the Latin is, but the English translation, hey, if you don't bite as a puppy, you ain't biting as a dog. And so if you're not a self-starter that's going to go out there and throw the first punch, you might get a bite here or there as an adult, but if it wasn't happening consistently before that, that dog ain't going to bite. You can manipulate that, and you can manipulate the environment a little to get it, like Jack was talking about. But, I look at a guy like Pascal. He's come out, at least in 2 of these 3 games, and been one of those guys that decided he was going to try and hit first in the game against Cleveland, in the first half of the first quarter against New Orleans. But 1-on-5 isn't getting it done. Some of the other guys need to join the party as well. So to your point, Sherman, I think you can manipulate some of the environment to get the desired results with some, what is that, Pavlovian or operant conditioning. But if you're not a person like that, it's not happening.
Well, then it's not going to be habitual. And that's what I'm getting at. It's going to be hit or miss. So we talk about the Cleveland game where Pascal comes back and he hits the ground running. He's a one-man wrecking crew, and he has energy for everybody. But if it's not habitual as a group, then you're going to have – and we've seen this before where the Raptors maybe not giving up 40 points, but they fall down in the first quarter. And the deficit isn't so big that they're able to make up their ground in the second quarter and make it a game earlier. So to me, I agree. I think it's an innate thing. And if you're not wired that way, you can do it sometimes, but the consistency with which you would want it to happen with becomes difficult to expect.
Jack gave me a number a few years ago, and I've been researching it and watching it and following it. Jack, what did you say the percentage was of the team that wins the first quarter wins the game? 60,
it's over close to 70%.
Close to 68, 69. So here
I don't have it in front of me of late, but as of a few years ago, it was like right around And I remember chatting with Doug Collins one time.
Yes.
And
yes.
that was his whole thing. He says, just look at the numbers. The team that wins the first quarter is winning the game right around 70% of the time. So that's big.
Yeah, Randall, we talked about this. We've talked about this. This is all NBA. People say, oh, just tune in for the fourth quarter. Hey, man, you're watching the end of the movie. You missed all the stuff at the start of it. And the Raptors are 4-10 this year when they trail after the first quarter, 2-8 when they trail after the first half, and 2-8 when they trail after the third quarter. Flip it around, 7-1 when they win the first, 9-3 leading at half, 9-3 after the third quarter. So it tells you something, to Sherm's point, about coming out. Dwayne Casey used to say, it's a street fight, man. Don't stand there and wait to get hit.
Jacko.
Two things. Number one, to the point that Sherman and Jonesy are making, and Jonesy just provided us some interesting numbers as well. I think this team plays well when they have a cushion, right? And clearly, when they have a cushion, they're more relaxed. They play better. They're more assertive. Maybe their opponent gets a little rattled and takes chances. So there's a lot of psychology there. And secondly, here's the one that's harsh and cold, and it's a business Max. It's a business line, and it's a line that coaches use too, and that is, if you can't change the people, then you need to change the people. And that's cold and that's harsh, but nonetheless, are we at that point yet? I think tomorrow night you're playing Orlando. So will it be as big a factor? Maybe, maybe not. Now, Monday night against Boston, but Monday night against Boston, that matters. In terms of like the quality of the opponent you're playing against. I mean, the last two teams you played against, New Orleans and Brooklyn, and even the first. But to me, I think that's something that I'm sure in the back of Nick Nurse's mind, he's saying to himself, well, hold on a minute. I started Aaron Gomez and Young with Pascal, OG, and Fred on Monday night, and my team looked different. Now I've had some different starting lineups the last two nights, and we've got our heads kicked in the first quarter. Do I have to start thinking that way? On the other hand, you got 60 games left. There's no need for panic either. But what happens is you get exposed in these moments. You learn a lot about your team, and you have to kind of adjust from there. So whether it's doing something that gets your team going and you go up to the fourth floor gym in Toronto or whatever floor it's on and work out for a little bit and get guys going, demand that guys are out on the court earlier for warm-ups and going hard and breaking a big sweat, whatever. If you got there are a lot of different things you look at, but the bottom line is, Jonesy, you made the point, and it's so right. This team is different when they play with a lead and get off to a good start. And clearly, that's an issue that has to be resolved. But you got 60 games to resolve it. Some of it might be strategic in terms of how you go about preparing your team for the games. And part of it might be the fact that you might have to change some people.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, good stuff. Going to stop you there. Next game for the Raptors is Saturday at home against the Orlando Magic. Tip-off goes at 8 p.m. Eastern. And after the game, come by Real Sports, catch our show live as we stream on YouTube. We'll also be taking your questions and comments during the broadcast as well. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.